Hello guys, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel of inspiring stories. Guys, I am back and like always today I have a very special guest who is coming in to share her story. She is the author of a new book as well. I am so pleased to have Nikki come forward and talk about her story, her book, and so much more today. Without any further delay, let me bring on her and start our conversation. And I can see that she is here. Let me send her the request. And we are just connecting. Oh, hello
Hello,
there.
how
Hi,
are
how
you?
are ya?
I am good, thank you.
Nikki, before we dive in into our conversation, just a little brief introduction about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll dive in our conversation.
So I'm Nikki and I'm from Melbourne, Australia. So right now it's 8:30 here. What time is it there for you again? The
It's
three
it's it's 3:30.
3:30. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so I am a solo mum. I have an 8-year-old son and I work 4 days a week at a hospital doing project work. And I have written my book, Don't Do It, Carol, which I know we're going to talk about today. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
All right, that is great, Nikki. So, Nikki, let's talk about. I read a little bit about your book. It's amazing, and I can't wait to grab a copy of it. But let's talk. What inspired you to write this book?
When I went through a separation, which then obviously led to my divorce, when I was trying to navigate what I needed to do to set things up for myself financially, the whole process of going through the courts, the family court order, there wasn't a resource that had everything all in one book for me. I had to do a lot of research and I found it really hard to connect with other women at that stage because no one in my family had been through what I'd been through. In essence, I was the odd one out in my family. There was no divorce in my family, and so I felt really alone. And I was on my own, and I didn't have that resource to go to. And a big part of my book was to also connect with other women who've shared their stories in their book, and to make everyone know that you're not alone, and this journey isn't a journey that needs to be on your own, and that we all have had similar experiences.
Right, absolutely. Nikki, you said it twice that I didn't have the resource to go back to. What do you mean by that?
As in, I didn't know. I knew that I needed to get family court orders, for example, but I didn't
Okay.
know how. I didn't know how to do that. Finding a lawyer, and then being on your own, being a woman on your own is, it's a lot harder to get that help and those resources because you're almost viewed as a woman on their own with a child. You almost got this black cross against your name where you're how you're going to pay for it, how you're going to do it. Most likely, the woman's the one that's looking after the child more often. So
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to get that support and to find someone to represent me, and also scary too to take that step as well. As a woman and as many women, you try to keep the peace. You think that by moving forward, you're going to somehow jeopardize that peace, and you don't want to do that. So you take a step back, but the reality is that you can't take a step back and you need to keep going to get everything done properly so that it's all finalized. But it's scary. It's a big step, and it's a hard step.
It is. I agree with you. I know that you stated that nobody in your family has gone through divorce. Talk about that a bit more. How did you feel when you came to the conclusion that, okay, I need a divorce? Were there challenges? Were there things going inside of your head? Or was the delay in seeking the divorce part of because nobody had seek divorce in your family? So talk more about that.
I mean, I was a girl that grew up, couldn't wait to get married. I couldn't wait to get married. That was my dream. I want to get married. I want to have kids, and I was so excited. This was my, one of my goals, aside from a career, that was a major goal. I wanted to be a mum, I wanted to be a wife. The whole process to me was something that I've always dreamed about. And coming to the realization that this dream was not what I thought it would be. And then thinking to myself, what's going to happen? Even though everyone has their own stories that led them to that point of where they know that this is it, I can't do this anymore. But then the other thoughts come into your mind. How am I going to survive on my own? What's that going to mean for my son? What are people going to think? Is he going to be categorized at school? What is my family going to think? How am I going to rock up to an event on my own? All those things that to happen, but the reality of it is just so scary, and it's not one that you talk about. I feel like women do that on their own and feel like they need to do that on their own because, you are judged. I can't sugarcoat it. You are, people will look at you and go, oh yeah, that's that one there, that they're on their own. People do that, that's life, and it's not just this situation, it's other situations. It's just, it is what it is, and you don't want to be judged. But more importantly, I didn't want my son to be judged, and you just worry, is he going to be okay? Am I making the right decision? Am I going to ruin his life? And you put all these pressures of all these unknowns that can almost give you so much fear and paralyze you that you actually don't even make a decision because you're worried about all the things that haven't even happened yet. And it's scary. And of course, I don't want to be that one person in my family that's divorced. I didn't get married thinking I was going to get divorced. I got married thinking that was it.
Right, absolutely. When it's so amazing because I just earlier made a post on the same thing, and it's really interesting where our beliefs come from and where how we, because of a belief, make life choices. And I was having a conversation with a really good friend yesterday, and he wanted to know about my story. And one of the things I pointed out to him was all I ever dreamt of, all I ever wanted, like my life goal was to get married, to find my Prince Charming and live happily ever after. So I was dreaming that I was this Cinderella and my prince is going to come and take me, like he's going to rescue me. But the funny part is that when I was narrating that to him yesterday, I really had to stop and say, you know what, now that I say it out loud to somebody else, it sounds really funny because now I want to ask myself what I was looking for. Why did I need to be rescued? Like, it was not like I was imprisoned. It was not like I had a bad childhood. It was not that I wasn't loved and taken care of. So where was that story coming from that I'm this princess waiting for a prince to come and save me? Save me from what? So it was, hey Matthew. So it was really an eye opener for me as well to see, oh, okay, so this has been my belief since I could remember ever, like maybe when I was 10. Why? Because all I saw was fairy tales, right? So I was amused by Disney fairy tale stories. And that constructed my whole belief, not just but my belief, it transformed my identity, who I really was in true essence. I lost that because now I had attached myself with the identity that I need a Prince Charming who's going to come and save me. But save me from what? I didn't even know the what. Maybe save me from my emptiness. Maybe save me from feeling of not being enough. I really didn't have the answer. But because I was brainwashed through the story, that became my story. So for me, it was literally yesterday. It was an eye opener to find and look within myself and find an answer to something that led me to my choices in life. And like you said, for women like you and me, who have dreamt, who have had just the goal that we want to get married and we want to have kids, for us, coming out and wanting a divorce is the last thing. When we get married, it's like, this is it. This is our happily ever after. And we never, and I'm sure you will say yes to it, we never even think of the word divorce. We know this is going to last and this is going to be forever and whatever. So, and
Yes.
like you said, for you, nobody had taken a divorce in your family. For me, it was the same. I belong to a culture where though divorced has been normalized, but it's not normalized as well. You know, on the
Mm.
surface of it, it seems like, yes, because divorce rate has gone so high, that it
Yes.
seems that it's become normal, but it hasn't really, because you still look like an outsider, you're still judged. And guess what, being a woman, you wanted divorce, so now you're judged all the time.
Yes.
And Nikki, I want to ask you, because I read in your book, and it was really interesting because it just hit home, because I believe the same thing. You said that, why do we need to come forward and say, "Hey, hi, my name is Mavish, I'm a single mom"? Why? Why do we have to put ourselves in boxes where we are attached with labels that attaches to men? So I'm
Yes.
a mom, that attaches me to a husband, or if I'm a daughter, that it attaches me to my father. So why can't I just say I'm a mom? Or why can't I
Exactly.
just say I'm a woman? So I
Yes.
want you to shed some light on that, because you wrote it beautifully in your book.
I think for me, when I entered this new chapter in my life, I found that terminology of the single mum used so commonly, and it was frustrating me. It was when I was married, I was never referred to as, oh, I'm a married mum. But all of a sudden, now that I'm not married, the terminology of this single mum and the stigma of this single mum is just used so commonly that it just frustrated me. And I just don't
Mm,
understand why it's in two parts where women feel the need that they need to say, like, you need to put your cards on the table and tell people you're a single mum. You don't need to
mm,
say that. This is not part
yeah.
of you. You are a mum. And I think people lose that and feel like they need to share this information, like they're already saying, oh, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why we do this to ourselves. And I don't refer to myself as that ever. I'm a mum. I'm a mum. That's what I am. And when I was married, I was still a mum. I'm a mum, but I'm also Nikki. I'm also me. You know, I haven't
Yeah.
lost who I am. And I think that in this phase, people use it too commonly. And then there's this stigma attached around a single mum. It's presumed always that, you know, if you're a single mum, that you're struggling, you're not coping, you're not coping financially. And you might not be, but there's also people that aren't single mums that are also going through that. So
Mm,
why do you need to share that?
mm,
Everyone has their own battles. It doesn't matter whether you're married or you're not. That's not the issue. It's that
mm,
you're a mum and you don't need to label yourself. And I think when you lose that label and don't think that you need to tell people and introduce yourself as that, like it's something wrong, because there's nothing
mm,
wrong. You've chose
right,
to be happy. That's what whether you're
right.
married and happy or not married and happy, you've chosen happiness. That's it. It doesn't
Mm,
matter. You don't need the label.
yeah. It's like we identify ourselves
Mm.
with that label, and then our whole identity, our whole way of perception, our whole way of living and making life choices is around that. Because when I say, "Hey, hi, I'm a single mom," then I am accepting that, and then I'm introducing myself with my identity as that. Then I'm making life choices around that. So,
Yes,
with that label, if there is shame, if there is guilt, if there is judgment, then I'm accepting that, because that's how I'm showing up for myself.
exactly.
So why don't, because this is really interesting, because I've been really contemplating on that myself, that it's how you show up. And I show up all the time. "Hey, hi, I'm a single mom of two kids." Like, why? I'm
Mm.
Mavish. That's it. And
Yes,
and then comes the role of the daughter, the sister, so on and so forth. Because women are given labels, they themselves identify them as under those labels. They have to live that life. And living under a patriarchal culture, I've seen the effects of that, because we are now seen like objects, because we are not seen as individual beings. So a woman is not a woman. You're not a woman. You are a daughter. You are a wife. You are a mom. You're not a woman. That doesn't exist in my culture. So that gives the male the upper hand to use you, to abuse you, to objectify you, because you don't have your own identity. Your identity is attached with the male, right?
Yes. Yeah, I just think it's just about just not labeling yourself. You don't need to label
Yeah.
yourself. And the reality is that women who are solo mums are giving themselves that label, and we're putting ourselves in that own position. We don't need to. It would be as crazy as introducing yourself and saying, "Hi, I'm Nikki. Here's my bank account details. This is where I work, and this is my address." It's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's just not
Right.
necessary. Yeah,
Right, right. You could just say, "Hey, I'm Nikki. I'm a
exactly.
mom," or just say,
Yeah.
"I'm Nikki." I mean, the mom
Yes,
can come afterwards when it's needed, right?
exactly.
Just first get comfortable with just showing up as you.
Yes, and that's not to say that, that's not to say when you know someone and they get to know your story. I'm not sitting here saying you don't need to tell anybody, you should be ashamed. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just
Right,
saying
absolutely.
that when you introduce yourself, it's not a necessary introduction.
Yes, yes. I mean, we're not imposing, we're just sharing the different
Exactly.
views we could have around it. Uh, Nikki, I wanted to understand. You stated that nobody in your family was divorced, and you were the first one, right? I want to understand more about your culture. Is divorce something normal? Is it looked at something that's acceptable for women? How does that play out in your culture, being from Australia?
So I'm from Australia, but my cultural background is Italian. So my parents and
Okay.
grandparents. And it's, I guess, seeing my grandparents, for an example, I've seen, both sides, grandparents where it's normally the husband that's annoying the wife, and you see the wife just turn the eye, you know, they put
Right.
up, they shut up, quite frankly, and they just
Hmm.
are that good person and they tend to their husband and they do everything. And I grew
Hmm.
up seeing that as normal. Then I watched my
Hmm.
mum do, my dad worked. I watched my mum do everything for my dad. She was happily picking up all his stuff. I grew up in that culture. It was just normal. Then when I got married and I, started taking care of the house, then I started picking up all this stuff and, running the house. And I was excited. I actually was really excited about doing that. I grew up doing that. But
Hmm.
I grew up in a culture where no matter what happens, you just stay. It doesn't matter what
Hmm.
happens, you stay. And
Wow.
almost a culture of where sort of you've made your bed, you lie in it, if that makes sense to you.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I remember one time talking to my nonna about something my grandmother about something that happened. And she had said to me, "You don't think that I've been through that? You just keep your mouth quiet and you keep walking one foot in front of the other." So it
Hmm.
wasn't even open for discussion. So it's
Oh.
it wasn't even spoken about. So then
Hmm.
when you're in that environment, then you sit there and say, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to anyone about it then. I'm going to say nothing. And then you
Hmm.
create this false environment where you pretend, well, I pretended that everything was better than what it was. Like I had
Hmm.
to pretend like everything was fine in front of people so that no one knew that anything was wrong. And it was, I felt like I had a mask on when I was in social situations. I had a different face on to put on this whole act of what it was when it wasn't.
Hmm.
And it was
Hmm.
exhausting.
Hmm. I mean, this hits home because I thought that my culture is the only culture where women are supposed to do what you're saying, but it's shocking, but it's a learning experience to know that, oh, it doesn't even have just happen in my culture, but it happens in many cultures, and where just like you, we've never seen our moms, our grandmoms, our aunts question their husbands when they were
Mm.
doing something wrong. They just went with the flow and pretended everything was good and it's happy and this is the way it is. We we made our beliefs that this is right, this is how marriage looks like, this is how relationships look like. Men have the upper hand because they are the providers, so they are going to be in control and they are
Yeah.
going to make all the decisions around the home because they are the providers. But women were taken for granted. I mean, the role a woman plays in a man's life is I mean, it's amazing because we are wives, we are mothers, we are homekeepers, and we pursue careers. So we're all rounders. We do everything without
Yep.
complaining, really.
Yes.
And we're not appreciated because most of us uh, do not run the home. The man runs the home. He is the sole provider, basically. So we are considered weak, and we take a back seat because of that. And for me, in my personal journey as well, it was the same. I attached myself to where I labeled myself as the bad wife, as the bad mom, because I wasn't happy. The masks were falling off, the reality was showing itself up, and
Yes.
oh no, 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 my mind is playing with me. I'm getting inside of, actually, it was not getting inside of my head. I was actually coming outside of my head and realizing that there's something really wrong here. This is not how marriage is supposed to be. And seeing that women who've lived that pretentious life,
Mm.
when you talk to them, you always get that backlash, not because they're bad, but now you are standing there here in front of them because you're more empowered. You had the guts to stand on and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And that woman is right in front of you while you're not even really saying that to her, or you're not really
Mm.
making it about her. She's making it about herself, that, oh, I'm the bad one in this because I took the abuse, because I didn't choose to raise my voice. So I feel the conflict between women. There's a friction where I speak with women who've chosen to live or have lived in the abuse and still continue to live, that I'm a threat, whereas I'm not a threat. Uh, you have the right to make your own life choices. So if you want to live with the abuse, that's absolutely okay with me.
Mm.
But because I chose not to, why am I being a threat to you? Is also one of the challenges I've had. Uh, I wanted you to talk about that. Have you had that with women on your side, where you've had that friction, where you felt like, I'm not really a threat here. I'm just trying to save myself or be myself and do what is right for me.
I guess for me, I think maybe people who might be going through this chapter in their life, or have started to go down this chapter, which of course, I hope no one does. In a perfect world, I want everyone to be okay, and that would be the best. But when it doesn't, I feel like people might are more likely to come and talk to me about it, knowing that I've been through it, and
Mm,
which is because they know that I could relate. Just the same
mm,
as it was another topic that you knew someone else knew about. So I
right.
think, and I think that because I can speak openly, and that I can use my voice, and I'm not scared to use my voice anymore. That if someone
Mm,
was to ask me, of course, I would tell them about my journey if it could help them, and hence why I'm here talking with you today as well. But I'm
mm,
not sure so much about a threat. I think that sometimes you sort of think twice because you're on your own in terms of social situations. If other people were there and you were on your own, you'd think, oh, this might not look right because I'm on my own and I'm not married, so maybe I
mm,
won't be here. And I think that's more how I've sort of viewed things in situations where I'm aware that I don't want people to view me because I'm on my own, and I don't know, and their husbands might be there. I don't want them to view me because I'm on my own. Just because I'm on my own doesn't mean I want to date your husband. I'm just on
right.
my own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You worry about what
Yeah.
other people might think, even though that's not
Right.
what's going on inside my head.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Uh, while I mean, I've had a lot of women in my culture come up to me and say, I want to talk to you because I know you'll get it because you've been there.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, I've had women who are elderly, and who have lived the abuse, and they don't leave, they don't want to leave, they don't plan to leave, where
Yeah.
they're not really saying it. I don't know if I said it out right before. They're not really saying it on my face like, oh, you're a threat, but the vibe, the feeling, the conversation is like, you are coming and telling us that all our life we've lived a lie, because now you are choosing to walk out of it, and we have been brought up with that belief that you have to do that. Because for me,
Yeah.
when I've had conversations with people who've lived their life, their entire life, uh, accepting emotional abuse. I'm just talking about emotional, not even
Yes.
going to physical.
Yes.
And the backlash was, but this is how men are. We've all been through this. What's different about your story? You want to hear my story because it was worse for me. Yours doesn't look that bad. So
Yes.
for my initial reaction, it was like, oh my God, did I do something really bad? Will I be able to go back? Because guess what? Now I started self-guessing my own decision where I felt that I had taken the right. But then I had to like sit back and ask myself, why did you really leave? And then come back and say, no, I left because this is not acceptable. I will not be treated as a lesser person. So there was no way, and there is still no way that I can get through certain women because I feel from their feedback that they feel that when you are doing this, you're actually labeling us as we took the abuse and we stayed in the abuse. So we are wrong now because now you're raising your voice and saying this is wrong. So now you're putting everybody on the spot who've lived that life and saying this was not right to begin with, because there nobody's done that, nobody's done that around me. So if I were to sit with 50 women who've lived their life, are in their 60s, 70s, and so on and so forth, and say that, then that questions their whole life, that questions their whole identity. Where of course with somebody who's my age or close to my age and are going through the same stuff, the subject became more relatable, the subject
Yes.
became a conversation of possibilities. So that's the challenges I've had. Nikki, we actually dived in the conversation right away, but I would want you, because people have started to come in a lot, just talk a little about your story, if that's okay with you, what you basically went through in the marriage, so we can know more about it and why you're here.
Yes. So I went through. I had a. I'm also aware of what I say on. I'm also aware of what I say because I'm a big believer in that. Man, no matter what you put out, having the fact that I also have a son, that one day he's going to get older, and if he ever finds out anything, I want him to be straight from my mouth. But my marriage wasn't a good marriage, and it wasn't a healthy marriage, and it got to the point where I didn't actually know who I was anymore. I completely lost my identity, and it wasn't happy. It wasn't happy, and there were
Right.
many things that weren't right. And like anyone in their marriage, you try and make it work, you try and fix it. You think it's you. You think, if I can just change, if I can do this, maybe if I don't do that, maybe if I don't ask this, maybe if I just don't ask at this time or only ask at these times. And it was crazy. I was walking on
Mm,
eggshells, and I knew that this wasn't a way to live. I knew
mm,
that, and I think that anyone going through that, no one needs to tell you. We all know.
mm.
You know,
Yeah.
every the woman knows. They know
Yes,
whether they want to
absolutely.
say it out loud or not. Because sometimes
Hmm.
you worry about saying it out loud because you think, if I say it out loud, then it makes it true. So,
Hmm.
and that's an also it can also be another fear. And
Yeah.
but knowing that this was emotionally and physically an unhealthy marriage, it really
Mm,
did take having my son to give me the courage to leave, because sadly it wasn't enough for me to say, at that point in my life, to say, no, this is not okay, this is not acceptable, and you don't need to put up with this. I
mhm,
couldn't make that choice for me at that point. But when I had my son, things changed in me. All of a sudden, I said to myself, I don't want my son to grow up and think this is what a happy marriage looks like. I said to
mm,
myself, it's my responsibility. I don't want him growing up thinking that this is normal, because this is not. I don't want him to then, grow up and do the same thing and act this way. I want him to
mm,
see his mother being spoken to respectfully, and I want my son to respect the way he speaks to me as well. And how could he do that in this environment? So I
mm,
left for my son first, really, and then me second. But he
mm,
really saved me and gave me the strength to say, no, this
yeah.
is he will not be growing up like this.
Wow, amazing. And how old was your son when you walked away?
A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long was the marriage for?
So we were together for 11 years, 12 years.
Wow.
12 years.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. 12 years. So after 12 years, you had your awakening, right?
Yes. And then it's hard
Nikki,
too, like women,
sorry.
you sit there and you say, oh, it's been 5 years. Oh, it's been 10 years. Like all of a sudden, oh, well, I've invested this much time. Let's just let's just ruin my whole life.
Hmm.
It's funny, you get to this
Yeah.
time frame and you say, oh, well, oh, now it's been this amount of time. But,
Hmm.
forever is a long time. It's a long
It
time.
is.
Yeah.
It is. There is no timeline actually. It's really
Mm.
interesting because I know for a fact women who walked out of marriages when their kids are adults, the daughter is married, the son has his life, all gay, and now they choose to walk away. And people come up to say, why now? After 30 years, after 40 years, why? And I'm like, why would she even say that to her? Do you know how many years it actually took her to take that decision? She gave
Yes.
30 years. She gave 30 years of her life. She invested 30 years of her life in hopes that the
Mm.
marriage would work, that her husband would change. But people
Yeah.
just flip it and make it about, but why now? So I think that really when you said it, that really made sense because there is no timeline. Whenever you're ready, whenever you feel that no more, I can't take this, walk away. Don't question it whether it's 10, 20. Don't look at that. Like you said,
Yes,
forever is a very long time. That
it
was
is.
beautifully said. And Nikki, when you said I have two kids of my own, and one of the things when I had to make a choice was, am I going to live with him or whether I'm going to not live with him? Is this final or is this not? I really asked myself, what do, while of course like you, my kids gave me the strength to see that this isn't right for myself. It's not healthy for me being a mom and for them. The thing I asked myself was, what am I teaching my daughter really? Am I teaching her that this is the way women have to be? Zip your mouth, smile, and lay the dinner. And when they say the food is not hot enough or it tastes bland or whatever, you say, I'm so sorry, I'll fix it for you. Is do I want my daughter to live a life being submissive or empowered? And for me, it
Yeah.
was, I've done that. No way do I want my daughter to live that way. And for my son, actually, it's more because I brought up in a culture where men are not held accountable for their actions. I was driven that I want my son to grow up being a real man, knowing that it's okay to show your emotions and cry, and that
Yes.
doesn't define your manhood because you're crying. But being there for the woman you love by respecting her, by honoring her, not by abusing her, not by being in control and showing you that I'm in charge here. So for me, I really asked, if I'm going to live in this situation and go on, do you think my kids, if I tell them don't do this in your relationship, look at my relationship, will they really listen to me, or will they just go on and live with what they've seen? And sadly, the fact was, we don't listen to examples that are given to us, but we live our lives through what we experience. So my kids were experiencing that environment that was becoming their normal for them. That was becoming, this is the right thing. And I didn't want that. So I was like, you know what? I thought and I believed that you live for the kids. Once you're married, once you have the kids, it's no longer your life, it's the kids' life. Well, guess what? That is so wrong, because it's not. If you are not a happy, healthy mom, it's going to have effects on your kids, whether you realize it
100%.
or not. And when I detach myself, when I look at myself being a mom, then I can see how toxic I myself was for my kids, because I wasn't there for them. Walking on eggshells and all that, you're not yourself. You've lost
Mm.
yourself. You've lost your essence. So you're not there for your kids. What was I going to give in that to my kids, really? So I had to detach myself from that environment to really see the big, larger picture. And it wasn't a pleasant one. And it was very disturbing and heartbreaking that it took me so long to get to that conclusion. But also
Yeah.
that, okay, now I've seen that, I have time and I can fix that.
But you know, I don't think there's any woman that I've spoken to that woke up and just said, that's it, I'm going, tomorrow I'm going. Like when you said
Yeah.
about that time that
Yeah.
it took, I mean, I was exactly the same. I thought about it, and then I even left and came back and tried again. And then I
Me
was
too.
disappointed with myself. I said, why did I do
Yes.
that? I fell for this again. Oh, I shouldn't have
Yeah.
come back. And I thought, how could I do this again? But I think it's because we we don't give up, and we want to sit there and turn around and say to ourselves, I know that I can 100%. And then when you've come back again, you say, now I want to know that I can 1000% say that I have done absolutely everything in my power to try every single thing that I could possibly do to make sure that there's nothing I could do to make a change and help, you know, him see what's going on. And then you can sit there, and once you've exhausted all avenues, and that's why you can sit there, and I think it's an important part to go through, because now you sit there and go, you know, you've tried everything, so now you can really let go of your decision. Because if you had have not come back and you hadn't have kept trying, or whatever process you needed to go through, you may be sitting here going, what if I had to come back? What if that time he had to change? The reality is, and we know from speaking to so many women, that it doesn't change. We
It
know
doesn't
that, but
change.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if someone couldn't have told you that. You needed to do that yourself, and we all go through that process. So I think that no one should be hard on themselves if they've
Absolutely.
done that. I mean, I don't think there's any woman that hasn't done that. I've heard of
Yeah.
no one say, no, I made the decision, that was it, and I left and I never looked back. I haven't heard anybody say that. You
Yeah,
know, yeah.
I totally agree with you. And you know, this is really interesting because I've really asked myself that, okay, I've talked to, like, okay, let's say a bunch of women, and how come the stories are so the same? How come the patterns are so same? How come the thing, like, it's
Yes.
like when she's saying her story, it's like she's narrating my story. Like, how can of the dozen stories I've heard, it's the same thing, the same story, the same pattern? It's like on repeat. And I really asked myself, like, because I keep on going after the whys, and I really asked myself, why is this happening? And then it's like, okay, for me it is the minute you're born, the minute a girl is born, she is brought up in this way: be the good girl. If you're not good, or if you're not, you're going to be punished. Don't talk loudly, don't sit like
Yeah.
that, smile.
Yeah.
So we're brought up from a very young age with the belief that we have to be a certain way or else we don't fit in, it's not normal. And then we start to take the blame without knowing that we're taking the, okay, I laughed too loud, now my mom's going to be upset because everybody was looking at me, or I dropped that over my dress, now I've embarrassed my mom because it was a very expensive dress, and so on and so forth. So from a very young age, women were conditioned and brought up with the belief to take the blame, and women have to try, they don't give up. That is why that is where the cycle comes from. So that was my connection, that this is where it's coming from. It all starts with women and it all comes back to women. So women have to understand that when they use their power, they're not just empowering themselves, but they're empowering so many women outside. When I'm choosing to say, be authentic, be real, be vulnerable here with you in this conversation, make mistakes, oh, I said something wrong or whatever, it's okay, because I'm giving somebody else that space to be themselves, to learn, to evolve. Mistakes don't define us. And having this conversation is just to make women realize where it's all stemming from, where it's all coming from. There's nothing wrong with us. It's so much of brainwash and conditioning and generational trauma that
Yes.
we have accepted and lived on with, that now it's just our identity. By default, we take the blame. By default, we think in our heads that making the marriage work is solely our responsibility. making our men happy in the marriages is solely our responsibility. So it's so important to have these open conversations, so
Yes,
that we can learn from each other, and be real and be authentic with each other.
it is. It's so important. And I notice even, when we become mothers, it happens all over again. This
It hurt.
this ideal picture of what we think needs to happen, that, we will have a baby and our house will be spotless and dinner will be on the table, and we have this pressure that we're going to do all these things, and that everything will be perfect, and we won't talk to another mother about, the fact that our baby didn't sleep all night, or didn't
Oh my God.
attach, or something didn't happen, because then you sit there and go, oh, if they're not sleeping properly, that's me as a mother, or I'm doing something wrong. All this pressure we put on ourselves.
Comparisons.
Yeah, and then on social media, there's, the mother that's, looks perfect, everything's done, and her 5 children are all sitting there perfectly for that photo. And,
It's
your
gotten
one
worse with
son,
time.
yeah, and then your one son won't even smile for this one picture. You had to take 1,700 just to get one. But, this is all these things that we see and social media, and the pressure that we see of everything has to be so perfect. It's not. Sometimes things fall apart. Sometimes days don't go well, and we need to stop putting so much pressure on ourselves for every single aspect in our life. Not everything's supposed to be perfect. There's good and there's bad and there's up and there's down. And I think the more that we normalize that and we talk about it, the more that we realize we are all the same. We might have different journeys and how we got there. In my book, I had interviewed over 80 women. There's 30 people in the book that contributed to it.
Yeah.
But I asked 80 women all the same questions, 5 of the same questions. And it was a real learning curve for me, and helped normalize so many things for me, because the answers that I got back were so similar
What
for
were the
all these
5
people.
questions?
So one of the questions was, what did you have, was there a moment that you realized, that's it, I can't do this anymore? And for everyone, there was things that happened, but there was this one moment. It could have just been as simple as, could have been as simple as there was a towel on the floor, but it was that moment. So something happened at that moment, and they went, that's it, I can't do this anymore. Another thing that I asked was, how did you realize after the separation, when you were on your own, was there a moment that you realized that you thought to yourself, that's it, I've got this, I can do it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to be fine? And it was really simple things. It was, a lot of women were saying it was when they took their child to the doctor and they went on their own, they had to have an immunisation, for an example, and they did it on their own, and then they went, you know what, I can do this. Or they went on their first trip just with the kids on their own, and they were driving and went, you know what, I can do this. It wasn't some big magic moment. It was just something simple when they went, I can do this on my own. I could always do it on my own. I just forgot that I can do it on my own.
Or you were made to believe that you're
That's
weak and you
right.
can't do it.
That's right. We lost our confidence in ourselves. Of course we can do it on our own. There's a reason why we have children, because we're that capable. Do you know what I mean? We're the ones
Yeah,
walking
absolutely.
around with, that's right. We've been given the gift of having, of creating people. That's a pretty big gift. So
Yes,
we've always got this. We've always been able to do it. We've just lost the confidence in our faith in ourselves along the way. And, it
We were
doesn't help with
robbed
all
of
the,
our confidence, Nikki. We were
yeah,
robbed of it because of culture, because men wanted to control us, and we
yeah,
were told that. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you, but this makes so much sense, because when I was young, we were told, oh, you shouldn't study too much, you shouldn't go for a career choice, you can't do that, you can't run a house, that's the man's job. So
yeah,
we were not given the confidence, or instilled with the confidence that we can do everything. So we
yeah,
believe that okay, this is a weakness, or we don't have that strength in us to do that. And it's really interesting, because one of the reasons I think, when not really think, when I look back at my marriages, why I didn't leave, because there were red flags before I even got married.
the
But
same.
why
Yeah,
why
same.
did I stay? Why did I stay?
Yeah,
Because it was my own insecurities screaming in my head. And the biggest insecurity was, I had 2 kids, okay, and how am I going to support them emotionally, financially? how am I going to do that? And that was a big question. But when I detached myself, and I'm sorry to say that, but culture did play a big role in that, where they said, you can't do that. How would you do that? It's going to be impossible. Do you know how much it is and all that stuff? Do you know how the finances work? And I really had to ask myself, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? Is the kids' education, it's their life, and all, how I'm going to take care of the financial bit? Because guess what? Everything else I can do. And then I was like, you know what? I was doing that in that home. I was taking care of everything. I was taking care of the house. I was taking care of the husband. I was taking care of the husband's business little things. I was doing all those things. So why can't I do that? Why don't I even just
Yeah.
give it a shot and at least see, instead of just assuming that I would fail to it? And I have done that. So here I am showing up differently because now I believe in myself, and now I believe I can do that, and nobody is going to rob me anymore from that.
Yeah, I love that. I hear you talking and you sound like exactly what I would say, the same thing. It's so true. And once you start doing things and you go, yeah, I can do this, it just keeps building from there and you just grow
Yeah,
more and more and more confident and positive in yourself and you realize that this is the person that you always were. It
exactly.
was
You lost
hidden
that.
and
Mm,
you did, you
mm,
lost it along the
mm,
way. And now
mm.
your kids, like my son, sees, I was looking at these, I don't have my son this weekend and I always miss him when I don't have him. Anyway, I was looking at all the Mother's Day cards that he wrote me and it said these 10 things that I like about my mum. And one of the things it said, what's something that your mum is capable of? And this was in grade 2 and my son wrote, my mum never gives up, there's always another way. And I was reading it and I just thought this is exactly what I want him to know, that there is always
Mm,
another way and you don't give up. And yeah, and he wrote that in grade 2 and
wow.
it just goes to show that would he have written that before if I had stayed? No, he would have seen
Mm,
me, a different version of me. He wouldn't have seen this
yes,
version of me because I know I
yes.
wouldn't have been this version of me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that is so true, because my daughter, she's 11 now. And
yes,
I had this conversation with her when she was 9.5. And I said, she came to me, she came out of the bathroom actually, and she suddenly says, Mama, you're different. Out of nowhere, nothing. And she
yeah,
just says it out like that. And for a second, I was like, oh my gosh, I've done something wrong. I've done something really wrong here. And I was like, why do you say that? And she's like, I don't know, I can't pinpoint, but you're different, Mama. And I was like, okay, when you can elaborate that, let's have that conversation. And it was really recent that we had that conversation. And I was like, and she's like, you know what? I can tell you now why I said that. And she said, you were this person, this sad person. Uh, I I knew you loved me, but you were this different sad person, Mama. I can't explain it, but you were just not you. Now, this is a girl who's 10 or 10 and a half, stating
yes,
this. And now I see a strong woman, and I see you're so strong. And it made
of
me cry at that time. Nikki, I started crying and I hugged
course,
her. And I said, do you think I'm strong? Is that how you see me? And she said, yes, Mama, you're so strong. Look at what you've been through and you survived. And I couldn't stop myself from crying because I wanted her to see that. And I said, why do you think that I'm strong now and not then? And she said, Mom, because all the time you were crying. And I was
yeah,
and I was like, oh my gosh. But I did tell her this, because I want to share that I told her this, that crying doesn't define you as a weak person. And I said to her that, my daughter, I wasn't weak then. I was strong, and I was so strong then also, that because I was masking so much of pressure on me, that I needed a window to let it out. So that is why I was crying, so that I could cry it out, wash my tears, and stand up and be strong and smile and be of service again. So I was already strong. Even when I was crying, I was strong. And even now I'm strong. So don't ever think that when you're crying, because I know women are emotional, they cry a lot, that if you're strong, don't label yourself that, okay, I'm a weak person because I cry. And that is the truth. And that is what I really want to say to women here who are listening, that don't Don't label yourself because you're crying or because you're not seeing the picture you're supposed to, that you're weak. It gives it comes, you know, it's a lot of emotional strength to live through what you are living through right now. A weak person cannot live through emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse. You're strong, you have that. That is why you go through that. So you're never weak. So I don't want anybody to feel that way, really.
I've found that every time, I mean, yep, definitely cried a lot. And every single time I've cried, I feel like it's part of the healing process, because every
It is
time I've cried, after I've cried, I feel better that I have,
better.
because I've actually been able to let that out. And
Yeah.
I completely agree, there's no weakness in crying. And sometimes I even make myself cry worse, because I put even sadder songs on just to make the cry even worse.
Worse,
Let it
yeah.
all out, make it sound more
Yeah.
miserable, put the saddest
Yeah.
songs on and just
Yeah.
full
Let it
out
out.
bawling.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you know
Yeah.
what? The
Yeah.
next day I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I needed that. And the next day's
Yeah.
better. Sometimes you
Yeah,
can't,
it
if you're
is.
trying to hold everything in, you just can't. Sometimes you just need to. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that is absolutely okay. I
Mm,
always say that feel your feelings. Your feelings don't lie to you. They come there because they need your attention. You need to address them. You
mm,
cannot just say, I mean, I'm vacuuming. Literally, I'm just sharing this so people know. There have been moments I'm vacuuming. This is after I mean, this life, the single
yes.
life. I'm
Yeah.
vacuuming, and
Yeah.
there's a moment, and it comes to me, and I start crying. I've never told myself, don't cry. And I would start crying. And my daughter's like, Mama, you're vacuuming. Listen to nice music. Why are you crying? And I say, oh, well, I think I just had to cry. And I would sit there, cry, and she'll give me a tissue, and I'll cry. And after that, I felt like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. And the more I can do it, the more I can release that's stopping me from
Mm.
being me. Because sometimes I feel that we are in our own way. And if we just give ourselves the permission to feel our feelings without shaming or feeling guilt around them, we'll show up every time being a better version of ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Nikki, let's get back to your book. Just a quick roundup. I want you to share for the audience, people who are listening right now. Of course, we've given them a lot on what the book is about. But what if, let's say, I want to buy the book? What message will you give people about your book?
So the message that I give people about my book is that if you are looking for some hope and inspiration, if you're going through, this chapter in your life, or this is happening to you and you're not all the way there, but it's the beginning of that chapter, to know that this book will take you through all the steps, and it will show you all the things that are a part of that process, but it will also link you in with people that have gone through this process to make you know that you're not alone. There's a lot of things that happen along the way in this book, and although my name is Nikki, the book's called Don't Do It, Carol. So Carol's referred to a lot in this book. It was someone that I used as there's moments that in this process that we're all going to make mistakes, or we're going to say something that we realize maybe we shouldn't have said. For an example, it could be, your ex, if something's happened and you just want to scream something out, but you shouldn't. And I used to say to myself, oh, don't do it, Carol, don't do it, Carol, to stop me from saying something. So Carol's referred to a lot as this other person in this book, as this person in my head that you sort of sit there and say not to do something as a reminder. So she's in there as this funny reminder while talking about a serious topic, but it goes through all the chapters about the emotional side, the financial side, the family court, what that means, how you feel when you're entering that new stage of your life, what people's perceptions are, and even dealing with some of the things that people will ask. Like, you'll know that there's always those people who will ask you those questions that you don't want to answer, that they're
Uncomfortable
really
questions.
asking. Exactly, those uncomfortable questions. So it's even got in there these scenarios of ways that you can answer them, that you're answering them, but you're not giving them that information. You don't have to tell anyone anything that you don't want to. It's your story. You don't have to
Yeah.
say anything if you don't want to. And just because you're in this new chapter of your life, it doesn't mean that you need to have your information shared across everywhere, of course, talk to trusted people. You need to talk to someone, whether it's, a friend, or if it's someone that you don't want to talk to, whether you engage someone, a professional or someone like you that's a coach to help them through those stages. You definitely need to talk to someone. It's really important. But it goes through the whole stage of it, everything. And it's a good book just to make you understand that you're not alone. And that's exactly what I wrote this book for, that, that a woman would pick up this book in this situation and would feel better after reading it and know that they're not alone. And that was my sole purpose.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Nikki,
No
where do
problem.
we get the book?
So the book's available on Amazon. It's also available if you follow Don't Do It Carol. There's a shop now button on that page. But for any orders outside Australia, it's best to go to Amazon because the shipping through the shop website page it's a bit high to go international. So if you're any order outside of Australia, just on Amazon, it's on Book Depository. It's also available on a Kindle version and a paperback version. So depending on how you prefer to read.
All right, guys,
Yeah.
you got that right. If you do go and buy her book, please do tag her and tag me that you were inspired through this podcast and you got her book, you read her book, and what you learned from her book. Do grab the copy from Amazon, okay, guys? For women who are struggling, this is so important. You got free resources out there. She's saying she's interviewed so many women. She has stories in there, and if you feel that you're alone, struggling alone, there is her book for you. Nikki, I am so grateful that we finally did it. I
I know,
have
me
been
too.
trying to do that. COVID happened, and then,
Yeah.
I told you the other day, I'm still struggling with my focus, my way of speaking, the structure. I go like blank, but I think I did pretty well.
You
I'm so
did.
grateful. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful we did this. Final message you want to give to anyone and everyone listening right now?
I just want to say that I want everyone to always know that you are so much stronger than you think you are. You are more capable than you will ever know, and that happiness is a choice.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, I had an amazing conversation with you. I feel so good about myself after having
Good.
a deep conversation with her. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Nikki, I'm sending you so much love. Thank you once again for coming forward and
Thank you. Right
sharing
back
your
at you.
story.
Thank you.
Guys, don't forget to get her book. It's on Amazon. And I will tag her. So if you want to connect with her, you can just click on the tag after this post. Take care.
Right.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.